Bingo bango.
Hey, what's up, everybody? How you doing? It's your man Jay Kevin here, having an open and transparent conversation with my friend, co-host, brother in chat, Blake Taylor. Just gonna have a conversation tonight or this morning, evening, whenever you find us throughout the internets, the social worlds, the media's out there. Just gonna have a conversation, Leif. Just wanted to talk about grief and loss.
Yep.
Grief and loss, and a few things that has gotten me thinking about this and focused on this, this particular subject and topic at the moment is that, number one, I've been thinking about, the year 2020 and how for a lot of people, this has been a trying and turbulent year in which a lot of people are experiencing loss in some form, fashion, or, some way, um, with respect to a certain area of somebody's life. And, before we got on, I sent you a link of, a food bank line in
Yep.
Texas, I believe. They had like 6,000 cars in it. And I think the article said that they had serviced like 25,000 people. I think that's what it was. Hold up. Let me see here. But anyway, it was a significant amount of people when you've got 6,000 cars waiting in line at a mobile food bank. And in the article just talked about, some of the comments that were made by the people were that they were grateful and that they appreciated the help, especially during the holidays and during this time that we're getting ready to go into as far as the winter season. And some comments that were made were that a lot of people had experienced some form of loss due to the impact of the results, our response as far as the results of the response to COVID and the pandemic. And
Yep.
that's one thing. I've been seeing a lot of articles and things talking about that, as far as people experiencing job loss, a lot of abrupt career changing,
Yep.
a lot of families dealing with like a lot of emotional things like depression and fear and anxiety. I know that's impacting a lot of people, and then a lot of people uh, are experiencing like things like weight gain, and the pandemic pounds is adding up for many people, and that's causing some issues. I came across, I listened to one podcast, and it was just talking about the trend growth with respect to the junk food category and how it is
Yeah.
exploding
Yep.
right now. So just thinking about that, the loss of being in shape, that can be, that can have an effect on
For
some
sure.
people. Yeah, yeah. I'm talking about things. A lot of times I will come from, we do these talks. I'm coming from a place of experience in a lot of things that we talk about. So I'm not just, just throwing stuff out there. A lot of things we talk about, we both come sometimes from places of experience
Oh yeah.
and how we were able to work through and overcome and maybe even continually progress in
Yep.
the journey of getting through some things as far as overcoming some hurdles, some stepping stones, some things that may be in our way. So just thinking about that. And, another thing, talking about loss and grief, uh, my family had just recently had the experience of a loss as far as somebody who was like super young,
Oh wow.
teenager.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah.
didn't.
Really just kind of just, brought, whenever some of you experience something like that, it brings you back to the place of
Oh yeah.
going through the the five stages of grief. I don't know if you know the five stages of grief. I think about that often, just because I've just thinking about some of the things that I experienced in my past as far as loss and grief. I really honed in on the five stages. There are other variances to it. Like you might find some say 7 stages or whatever, but I really just honed in on the 5 stages because I just wanted to get a framework on how to process, some of the feelings and emotions we may be thinking, process some of the thoughts that you may go through, and kind of, get a framework on how to deal with that and process it and get through and get over it. So just thinking about the 5 stages being 1, denial, 2, anger, 3, bargaining, 4, depression, and then 5, acceptance. Denial, saying, man, this can't be true. I can't believe that. And then, once you get past that, you may go through anger about it. Just, like, I can't believe this isn't right.
You go through a lot of that.
Yeah. And then just going through bargaining. Well, God, maybe bargaining deals with maybe trying to mitigate or not negotiate and to get away from experiencing the permanence of loss. And then depression. And then once you get through that, then it's finally you get through acceptance. You don't have to go in that order. And depending on who you are and where you're at, it may take not too long. It may take long.
It may take years.
It may take years. That is true. And, so just give yourself permission to experience that at your own pace, given who you are. So give yourself permission to experience that and go through it. At the same time, ways of getting through it is, number one, making sure you have a support system and that you're connected, and that you have some eyes on you to see where you're at and how you're dealing with it and coping. Also, another way of coping and getting through grief and loss is making sure that you stay connected as far as prayer and purpose, as far as your spiritual life. And then also, like I said, staying connected, give yourself permission, and then finding some simple ways of coping, whether it be sleep, as far as getting your rest, whether it be good food, and making sure that you're nourishing yourself with some good nutrient-dense food. I know this is a big one for me whenever I experience grief or loss. And then also physically making sure that you stay busy and stay steady, and in making sure that you find yourself contributing in some way, as far as service, in some way, shape, or form, staying active, engaged, and involved in some kind of activity to help mitigate self-focus. Because when you get absorbed in self, it can really, you can get trapped in a dangerous loop.
Yeah, and the hard part about that is because on the one hand, you want to fully acknowledge and get it out.
Yes.
At the same time, because the longer you stay in the denial phase of it, the longer that stretches. And so you want to make sure that, there's really no one right way for anybody. And because grief is just so individualized, and also it can vary from situation to situation in terms of how you deal with it. One loss may affect you differently than another loss. Because I can think of, I've been like the scriptures say with Job, I've been quite acquainted with grief over my lifetime in terms of the people that have died, that have been close, that have died prematurely, through murder or accidents or whatever. And so I as you were talking, I was just going through my own scenarios of some of the ways I dealt with the different things, and like I don't know, because again, of course I know my own personality type, but I remember when I found out my brother was murdered, I literally went to work the next day, and I let him know. I was like, I probably won't be here next week. He's like, you sure you want to be here? I was like, yeah, I'm good. Because it was just like I was almost just numb to it.
Yeah.
And so I went on that day, and then it just hit me hard later, right? Because my brother, he lived in Georgia, so I knew that I had time before I was actually there. and present with my family and all of that kind of stuff. So it's very different for everybody. My wife, she lost pretty much a whole chunk of our family at one stretch of a year, and just dealing with that, and then our children being young, dealing with grief because they were really too young to articulate any of it, but it was coming out in terms of how their health, they would get sick and things like that because, at the time they were like 3 and 4. So they didn't know how to really cope with a lot of stuff. And, we talked to our doctor about it, and, our doctor was letting us know that this is how children that are young often go through stress and grief, is that, because they can't articulate it, but it just, comes out in various forms through their health sometimes.
Yeah. Children, as far as them experiencing it, you just have to make sure the lines of communication are open and keep a watch or a close eye, on them. And, but just thinking about that, just like you said, knowing yourself really helps, and knowing your personality type helps too when it comes to grief. And just thinking and just knowing how you process loss and grief, and how you deal with them, that can definitely go a long way. Just thinking about that, just knowing my personality type. Over the years, I don't know. I just learned to I don't know if it's because of how I was raised as far as attachment and stuff, but just learning how to just move through the process of acceptance and letting go.
Right.
I think we've talked about this, plenty of times in past shows. Yeah. And just thinking about, I know what it's like to get stuck in the loop of sorrow, grief. And, I think we've talked about in the past where these tools that we're talking about, when you practice them, when you cultivate and you learn them, it helps you kind of just move through it, accept it, and move on. And I don't want to sound too callous or not being person with empathy.
And again, it's just various degrees of it. I remember talking to one gentleman at my church, and he was like, "I've never experienced anybody close to me dying," and he was in his 60s, and never experienced it. He's like, everybody's been, at the very least, or the very, the closest to him was like distant relatives. So he's never experienced like the death of a parent, the death of a child, the death of a spouse, any of that kind of stuff. And the longer you live, the closer you get to it. It's inevitable. Or you may be the one that's gone, right? And so just becoming acquainted with grief and the grieving process, it doesn't necessarily protect you because, again, each one has its own sting, so to speak. So it's, because I remember reading Napoleon Hill, or actually I was listening to, I never had his book. I was actually listening to a speech from Napoleon Hill, and he was talking about the death of his father. And he was like, he found out about it, and he's like, okay, I can't do nothing about it. And he just kept going on. And, his family was like, why are you so callous? He was, for him, he was like, it's happened. I can't change it. But, I've never heard him talk about, in the sense of a death of a child or a death of or a spouse, somebody that you're extremely close to. So those things hit way different. And again, just based on your experience, based on, like you said, the way you're raised, all of these things, and sometimes grief doesn't even manifest until years later. Like, how some people may not, get past certain things for years. Other people, it may not even manifest because they don't know how to deal with it. They don't know that they're dealing with it internally sometimes. So again, it's always good to talk about that C word, the community, right? Have a community that you're close with, like you said, with the children, have people that know you and that can see changes in your behavior, because it's not always evident to you. It's not always evident to yourself, because sometimes you're not as self-aware as you think you are. For example, I when I say that, I think about, at the beginning of the whole pandemic thing, people's like, oh yeah, it's just only people that are deficient, are immune deficient, and they're talking about themselves like they're extremely healthy. And I'm like, bro, I know you, and you're not that healthy, and so sometimes you're unaware of like your own behaviors, your own personalities, or your own quirks that you may develop. And so having a community is good. Somebody that can point that out, like, hey, something's not quite right. Are you, everybody asks, are you okay? But if you know something has changed, and be very specific in what you ask, because are you okay is so generic, they be like, yeah, I'm fine. And you just give a general answer. But if you ask something very specific to get to the heart of the matter, that can be helpful as well.
Yeah, like you said, the C word, community, that's very essential. That the older I get, the more I realize how important community is, and just about every area of life. And that's one of the things that really helped me, and one of the things when I do research, when I was doing some research stuff about grief and loss, that's one of the things that really comes up. Right now I'm thinking about the 4 C's by Dr. David Lustig.
Yep.
The Hacking of the American Mind. Again, a simple framework that can be applied to help bring you back to a relative state of contentment and peace. Not that you'll stay there forever, but it's a framework that helps you modulate back to that. And the 4 C's is connect, contribute, cope, and cook.
Yep.
And that's the framework that I started the show off with, just contributing, making sure that you're involved in some way, and find a way to be of service, and then connecting, making sure that you keep those connections with family, friends, loved ones. Shauna says that everyone grieves differently. I always tell people to never allow anyone to tell you how they should grieve. Yeah, that's very important, to give somebody space. Give somebody room to grieve the way that they need to. When she said that, and you brought up Job, I always think about the beginning of Job, when Job first gets in his tough situation. His friends come, and they sit with him for like
3 days.
7 days.
Yeah, it was something like that.
Days.
Extensive amount of days without saying nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, they sit with him in silence. Now, how many of us got friends, or am I? That's just a rhetorical. That's a question to ask. Like, how many of us have friends that will come and sit with you in silence, and help shoulder some of the weight of your grief? Because there's really not much you can say in some instance like that.
Really not. Yeah, and I look at like the way I deal with the grief of others is kind of the way I deal with teaching. I always do things in how I would like to be handled, like in terms of like when somebody close to me dies or whatever, like I honestly just don't want to be touched, hugged, or nothing. I just want to be left alone, just the process and things like that. So I would probably be one of Job's friends that just sat there and just be like, yeah, I'm here when you need me. Because again, when I'm thinking about grief, I'm thinking about it from the extent of death, right?
Yes.
There's many ways to grieve things, right? There's many situations to grieve, but I'm speaking specifically about death, because that's like one of the most finite things we have in this plane of existence, right?
Yeah.
And so when I think about that, I just always give people space, and I always keep in mind that after the initial first week, then most people are left alone and go back to normal. And so I always let people know that I'm there for them after that first, after the funerals and all those things, when everybody is gone, because most of the time that's when you're alone. If it was a significant other, or, if you happen to live alone or whatever, those are the times that are trying for a lot of people, that constant silence. And so I always try to keep that in mind when somebody dies that I'm close with, the relatives that I'm close with. Just give them enough space, and like, whenever you need me, just holler at me, or I'll just check on, like, you okay? I remember one of my friends, their spouse had died, and and they put out a plea on Facebook, like, can you check up on me whenever? And so, like, I put in my calendar reminder, like, 2 months later, just to check in, just to see how they're doing, because again, it's those silent moments sometimes that, whatever, certain things can remind you. I've had people that have died in my life 20 years ago, and I still dream about them. And so,
Wow.
yeah, so I always just make sure I check up on people, just to see, if they're okay, because sometimes, you just never know, man. The
Yep.
psychology of, you just don't know, and you don't know when it'll affect you personally either. So,
Oh yeah, yeah, I can definitely speak to that. I've had, family members that one in particular that, passed, maybe a decade ago, but it's like a decade later is when you sometimes, you really
yep,
feel the impact, just thinking about, man, they really made an impact
yep,
on me. And it makes, it makes you realize the importance of appreciating what you have now and being grateful, uh, and brings a heightened sense of awareness of how, how relatively short life can be, and why it's important that we are grateful and appreciate the present as we have it. I was actually going to say the same thing. Leif said, it is the after the burial when people need you. Yeah, that's true. When things kind of relatively go back to normal, and then it's like
yep,
you really feel that loss. And we're talking right now as far as death, but
yeah,
I started the show off talking about death and also talking about other ways in which
yep,
people experience grief with respect to loss. Thinking about the pandemic and people losing
yep.
careers, losing maybe a lifestyle that they once had.
Yeah,
Um, you know,
the other C word, change.
Change. Yeah, yeah, man. Yeah, change as far as relationships, um, as far as just a whole range of things. Health. There's a lot of things in which we experience
Yep,
loss, and we have to learn how to deal with it. And I think the conversation is important on a regular, periodic basis, because the world that we live in for a long time, it was kind of like loss is kind of like sanitized, and many of us are far removed
yep,
from the nitty gritty of as far as loss and things that kind of uh, go along in society when it comes to things passing on. Right now, I'm thinking about when I had a job or I had a lot of nursing homes on my route, and
wow,
it's like when I would go into them, it was like I hated going to them, no matter which one I went into, because of the atmosphere. It was just it didn't sit well with me,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
I
I would
got you.
walk. I had on my particular route, I had for like years, and it's just like you would see certain people that you knew wasn't getting visited. They were just sitting in a room or whatever, just staring out the
Yep,
window for years.
yep,
And so it's like this area of life is kind of like pushed to the side, where a lot of people don't really see it. Whereas in times past, the norm was to have that inside your home or inside your close community where you
yep,
came in close contact on a daily basis. I'm thinking about my grandmother and how she lived uh, in close contact with everybody for a long
yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah.
So there was a lot of interaction, and you saw things over time. Whereas times now that's not the case, for many people. I'm not going to say for everybody.
Yeah,
So conversations like this is important with respect to that. And then again, I'm thinking about 2020, and a lot of people are experiencing a loss in so many ways that we
yeah.
have to have these conversations.
Yeah, because one of the things that Deshaun was talking about in terms of like like Law, she said she was prepared for like, the first, like birthdays, holidays without the person. And he said, but it was the second one that she wasn't prepared for. And again, like I said, it just hits you differently sometimes. And you just don't know. I mean, I can think of so many scenarios because I had a period in my life where I've talked about it on the show before. Like it was like every year we were just losing like
Yeah.
relatives this on a consistent basis. Actually, it was probably twice a year. The beginning of the year, the end of the year, somebody was just dying in our family. So like, yeah, all of my mother's, like above my mother, is gone. Like just that whole generation is gone. And it's almost the same thing for my wife. Like a whole generation of people is gone except for like one in her family, all of them in mine. And so you deal, and that's just the older people. It has nothing to do with the younger ones, in their 20s and things like that have died. And so just and also going back to where you was talking about the nursing homes and now dealing with the whole pandemic scenario, I was thinking about like, for those that are going through loss alone,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and not being able to, like you said, relationships and those things. Think about what a long distance relationship is like right now. It's usually hard enough to get to somebody when things are normal, but when things are not so normal, then it makes it even, twice as rough. And just thinking about uh, people, I found out somebody had died yesterday that I had no clue about. I was like, whoa, and just little things that you see, that people go through that you feel for, and it's like, okay, how can you not only help them but help others that are going through that same scenario? Like what kind of tips can you give people? We talked about community. What other kinds of tips can you give people to deal with these kinds of things?
Allowing yourself, we like to talk about allowing yourself to really experience it and the emotion, and allowing yourself to process it, and allowing yourself to really go through it,
Yeah.
um, in your way. That's one. And then one that popped up in the BetterHelp article. I think it was the BetterHelp article that I sent you.
Yeah, better
Um,
help.
they talked about self-care,
Yeah.
and I really didn't. It's kind of become a buzzword. Amongst
Yeah,
other
yeah, yeah.
things
Of
today that
course.
we have to talk about. But I didn't really realize how important and essential that was until you start looking for ways to, like you talked about, tips of how to really move through grief. And
Yep.
self-care is definitely essential. That's going back to COPE as far as the 4 C's with Dr. Lustig. Talks about sleep, unplugging, which was
Yep.
big for me, single tasking,
Yep.
uh, exercise, man, exercise was a big one for me, as as far as like helping move through grief. When I'm talking, I'm thinking about how I use the treadmill as far as a way of
Yeah, yeah.
exercise, as far as processing. We just get on it and you allow yourself to just go into the meditation of running. I don't know I think a lot of runners experience this. When you run, you go into a kind
The
of
runner's high.
meditation mode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you get the runner's high. Yep.
Yeah.
I've never been there. I don't run that long.
I have a love-hate relationship with it, but it's something I
Yeah.
figured out. I don't know when I figured it out. I think I tried track in high school or something. It kind of stuck with me as far as running, to where when you go through this mode of you get into a flow state and you go into like another world when you run. And I
Yeah.
know what it's like to experience that second wind and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't enjoy it, but I know what it's like. So that was one of the ways that I used to cope with grief. Um, uh, Working out, as far as with resistance exercises, that for me, and I know for many,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
a way of kind of coping. If there's something about getting heavy weight on you, or getting under heavy weight, uh, a weighted blanket when it comes to sleep helps as far as soothing.
Yep. Yep.
Um, Massage. I don't. we talked about that from time to time, how important touch and I know, given the times we're living in now,
Yeah.
but how important massage and touch. You talked about hugging. Some people don't like hugging, but some people do like hugging, and hugging is a way of passing on some of the emotions and some of the things you may be feeling and experiencing. We talked about in times past how emotions are contagious and how you can pass that along through touch, and also not even touch, but just being in the physical presence of somebody. Not even that, just face to face, like what we're doing, is a way in which you can experience the passing on of some of the toxic emotions, some of the things you may be feeling and experiencing.
Yeah, just get it out of you.
Yeah, just get it out. Journaling, um, music, is definitely something as far as way of coping, as far as a therapeutic practice that anybody can implement in their life as a way of getting through some grief or some loss. Giving yourself room to having those conversations too, and
Yeah.
making sure that you have a connection as far as
Yeah.
purpose.
Just like, yeah. And Shauna mentioned what I was going to say. Laughing helps.
Man, yes, it's to me. It seems like it's easier to do with all the stuff that's out
Yeah.
there. Right now, at the top of my head, she brought up laughing. I'm thinking about some of the stuff that we send back and forth as far as funny, videos.
Yeah. Yeah.
Having a community that you cultivate an atmosphere of laughter and some lighthearted moments that
Yep.
helps. Being around a community of people that's depressed and anxious and fearful and negative, man, I know what it's like, and I don't like it.
Yeah.
So
At all. At all.
not to say that you're not going to have those moments to experience it and have those things in your life, but it just helps when you're in a bind or you're in a tough situation, to where you have cultivated some relationships to where you can kind of have those lighthearted moments, even in states
Yep.
of grief and loss. That really
Yeah.
helps a lot.
And going back to one of the C's is cooking. Cooking good food, good quality food. A lot of times, we you mentioned it earlier. People, how the consumption of junk foods has gone up. And during those times, you definitely want to eat the best quality foods as possible, because you're just hastening on your own demise. In one, because the stress of grief can be very toxic to your body, and you don't
Yeah,
want to add to that toxicity by filling it with foods that'll just weigh you
help
down.
deteriorate. Yeah,
Literally all of that, deteriorate you, weigh you down, the whole nine. So definitely make sure that you are filling yourself. Have that on deck already. Have that good food on deck, good quality food on deck. And also, if you're helping somebody that's grieving or something like that, give them healthy foods. Don't give them foods that'll kill them, like literally. Because often, you see that people don't necessarily think about the nutritional side of the food that they bring people. I understand that, you can get comfort in sweets and things like that, but long term, that's not going to be very beneficial for them. So just think about that. I know it's easier said than done, but you want to just make sure that you're helping people get better, and you're not working against them inadvertently. Because I know people aren't doing it on purpose, but you want to make sure that you're not working against people.
yeah. That's one of the four C's. Dr. Lustig, he does he did a whole he spent a large percentage of his career studying sugar.
Yeah,
Um, So you can look him up as far as some of the books that he's written, and he's written a lot about sugar and how sugar depletes serotonin, which is the contentment hormone, and how it ramps up your dopamine and how it causes metabolic syndrome. He says it's a total disaster. So you add that on top of sugar on top of grief, and you're setting yourself up
yeah,
for disaster. China said, I'm so grateful to my circle. I don't have one friend or close family member, including my husband, that I can't belly laugh with. Yeah, if that laughter is medicine, as
Oh
one
yeah,
proverb says, and it goes a long way.
with the heart
It can
good like medicine.
yeah. So that can definitely help when it comes to loss and grief. As I'm thinking about earlier today, I listened to a podcast with Joe Rogan and
Okay.
Donnell. Donnell, the comedian, he with Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle was on there
Oh
too.
yeah.
Yeah. So just thinking about having a circle, an atmosphere of positivity and laughter definitely help. In the course of the podcast and the conversation, that the times that we live in, the pandemic came up, and people experiencing loss and
Yep.
things during these times. And in the conversation, Donnell was like, "Yeah, I hear you. We keep coming back to that, but at some point, you got to go. You just got to find a way." He's
Yep.
like, I empathize, and I'm definitely feeling, what's going on with people experiencing loss and change and turbulence to these times. But he said, at some point, you just got to be like, hey, you just got to find a way.
Yep.
And he said that before Dave Chappelle had come in on the conversation, and Dave Chappelle had come in on the conversation, and he said the same thing when they started talking about, without knowledge of what Donnell had said before they came in. So just thinking about staying positive and having that mindset of at some point you have to get to acceptance.
Yep.
And then at some point you have to say, well, this is where I'm at. How do I want to be after this? And then finding a way to get to move towards that.
Yeah. So basically what I hear you saying, which is something I was going to bring up as well, is finding hope, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Finding hope, finding something to reach for. And that's not to say that there's no pain involved. It's
Oh
just
man. Yeah.
that, okay. It's like
God.
like my dude ET says. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Eric ET the hip hop preacher.
Yeah.
He said cry to keep going and don't cry to give up, right? And so as you're crying, as you're grieving, make sure that you're still moving forward, because the last thing you want to do is become the next person that's being mourned, and that's very real, especially when you have children involved, when you have just community, like again, going back to community, because your community needs you. That's the reason why you're part of the community. We all need each other in some form of fashion. And so, of course you aren't always the strong one and you need to lean on other people, but you
Yeah.
don't want to stay there to your own detriment. And like I said, have two things that you're grieving as opposed to the one. And one of the things that I wanted to talk on, since we hadn't really stayed on it too long, is like loss of career, right? How do you cope with that? Going back to the image of all the cars lined up for Thanksgiving, getting food and things like that. How do you move on if your career, say that you're in the movie industry, in terms of the theater industry, right? And all the theaters that are shut down indefinitely, which may never open again. How do you cope with that? How do you move on? And one of the things that I was watching, I sent you a marketing video earlier, and one of the things that they talked about, it had nothing to do with laws, but in a sense, it still goes back into the same situation. It was like the best way to improve your income is to improve yourself. And what they meant by that was just through personal development. When the shutdown first happened, we started talking about taking advantage of the time to learn more, to improve your skill set, to work on your network, all of those different things. And it's never too late. And it may be more difficult if you wait later, in terms of, well, it's going to be hard to learn a new skill set as your bill is due. So you always want to learn, you want to prepare for war in a time of peace. You don't want to prepare for war during war. So take advantage of that. If you still have, if you still have your job, if you still have your career, you still have income coming in, definitely be thankful, but pay attention to the markets, pay attention to the times, because it may be coming for you. And so you don't want to wait to the last minute to be able to switch careers as a whole, or just make slight adjustments or slight pivots to move into something else, because now the pool of competition is increased because
Yeah.
more people are looking for more ways to get income and those kinds of things. And also not only that, but this is the time you have to start putting yourself out there. This is not the time to be
Sure.
meek or humble or anything like that. If you need work, if you need something from somebody, you better let them know. So it's like, okay, you can deal with the loss of, or of the job later. Start trying to figure out how you can rebound instantly, because you aren't the only one in that boat. And so the longer you wait, the more difficult it will become for you. So my advice in this situation is, again, with community, this is the benefit of community. Let your community know you need help. Let them know there may be opportunities for people to reduce, like, their living situations, reduce the cost of their living situation. If you're alone, then it's like, hey, I got several friends that we make just enough to pay rent in this one location, right? Or we have just enough money for this one service between us. So you just have to get creative. Another C word, right? Get creative. Don't mourn the loss of income too long, because you got to figure out how to fill the coffer. So
Man, yeah. When you were talking, you were making me think about pride and
yeah, it's
learning how to, because I know what it's like to, have a career change or experience a loss, and then having to swallow pride in order to, like you said, keep the coffers uh, somewhat filled. So just learning the lesson of, like you said, this ain't the time to be, I guess, humble, or this ain't the time to be prideful
yeah.
too,
That's
especially when,
pride
huh?
than it is humility. Yeah.
Yeah, especially when it comes to, hey, I'm used to existing at this level and having this lifestyle, but I may have to take a few steps back in order to get to where I need to get or whatever.
The thing is, you're not alone. Like, this is one of those times where there's literally thousands, if not millions. I don't know what the numbers are. A whole lot of other people going through the same situation, right?
Yeah,
And so you want to, again, the one thing about a community that's good to have is, I've had people, like when business grants and things are available, they'll hit me up like, hey, have you seen this? Are you aware of this? And so just little stuff like that is definitely helpful. And that's the benefit of having other people that care about you, and also the fact that you can care about other people. You may be, you may think you have nothing much to offer, but just a word of encouragement or just a suggestion, like, hey, have you seen this? This may work for you, right? And so definitely keep that in mind. And again, I know we're talking about loss, we're talking about grief. Uh,
but now we're talking about ways of coping and getting
yeah,
through it.
and again, helping others, which is what I was going to talk about earlier as well, is definitely a way to help you cope with your own problems. But because helping others often makes you feel better than the person you're helping. And so you do that as a therapy for yourself, and it reaps good benefit for other people. That's just the reality of it.
Man, that's the basis of our conversations, really. A lot of things
Oh,
we
it
talk
is.
about. It's like, well, for me, it's like I'm learning and I'm talking about, we're having conversations around things that we're learning that hopefully may inspire or motivate or whatever others. As I listen to conversations that inspire, uplift, encourage, encourage me. So, Shauna said a lot of people look at 2020 as being horrible. I, on the other hand, uh, look at the good opportunity to slow down, learn new things, do things I previously had no time for etc. Yeah, as we often say, it's the best of times and the worst of times at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. It's just time.
It's
It's
just
just,
time. It depends on your perspective. Are you a person, that looks at things in a scarcity mindset, or one that looks at things in an abundance mindset. We talked about it a lot, and that's something that Joe Rogan said on his podcast, just talking about the segment of podcasting and its difference from regular radio, and that the podcast environment cultivates an environment in which his mindset is that there's enough for everybody out there to eat.
Yep.
You know, so you don't have to be fearful or talk bad about somebody else's show or podcast or whatever, but just recognize that you can compliment and you can encourage and you can push and bring up other people and what they're doing, and that there's enough out here. There's too much out here for everybody to eat.
It's still in abundance, and I'll throw in another C word, not just because, but collaboration. Is a great time to figure out ways to collaborate with new people. It really is. And so, because people are almost literally hungry, right? In the sense of the hustle and in the sense of a belly sometimes, you want to be hungry. And so this is a great time to innovate, figure out ways to disrupt industries that are failing. If movie theaters are crumbling, I mean, streaming took off, those services are exploding. They're still exploding. There's not enough content to go around. With all the content that's being produced, they still want more.
Not enough.
Yeah. And so those are opportunities.
Hold on. Well, when you say that, what do you mean? Like, even though we feel like there's a lot of content out there on the internet, there's still not enough. And when you said that, it makes me think about globally. And it makes you think about how.
You think about it, there's always a need for the next big thing or the next thing or the next time filler. And again, because more eyeballs are available. And so it's the same scenario of people not really planning on being home a lot. And when they had to stay home, they didn't realize how empty their cupboards actually were. You know what I mean? And so you didn't realize how much toilet paper you actually used, or you didn't realize how much, because most people spend the majority of their time out of the home.
Yeah.
And so when you have to stay home, you realize that there's a deficiency there that you didn't bank on. Right. And so we're seeing this with content in the sense that even though there's billions, trillions of content, in terms of stories, in terms of all kinds of things, articles, any form of data, it's just in the market, there's always a hunger for new, right? There's always somebody that wants something new. And so, these networks are constantly looking for ways to fill their archives and get new content out there. It's one thing to stream an archive of old stuff, but they're always constantly looking for new stories, new perspectives, new ways of looking at things. And so that in and of itself is an opportunity. And even what that means is there's an opportunity for feeder industries that cater to that, right? Maybe you don't make content, maybe you make tools to make content, or maybe you service people that do content. So if it's like, okay, if I know all of these people are staying at home, then that work in this particular industry, what can I do to cater some services or some products specifically to those people that need to figure out how to do their work from home, right? So you can start brainstorming on that. Just get creative as possible, right? Necessity is the mother of invention, because if you need it, then you got to figure out a way to get it done regardless. And so take this time of hunger, of panic, to use those endorphins, to use that adrenaline to get you to move in a direction that's beneficial to you instead of that's detrimental. So that's one way to take a loss or a setback and flip it on its head to come up with new ways. Like, okay, if this is happening and this not only happening to me, how am I solving my problem, and how does me solving my problem help the next person? And then figuring that out can get you some money in your pocket, or it can get you some favor. It can get you a whole lot of different things that aren't just currency, but you adding value to somebody else adds value back to you.
Yeah, value is currency, isn't it?
It is. It
Okay.
really is. So just figuring those things out. And again, just these are just some tips. It's not the end all be all, but these are just some
No.
tips to get you to consider. Because again, everybody right now is going through something in some form. Or if you're not going through it now, you may go through it later, or you have friends that definitely are. So this is, us just trying to give some advice and give some, some perspective and maybe a new way to look at some of this stuff.
This is us just hashing out and
Yep.
just having a conversation about grief, loss, and ways to get over and get through and process it in whatever way you deem necessary in your journey.
Yep.
Um, so, Leif, that's all I have.
Okay. So I'll throw in a few more. Uh, get counseling if you need it. Uh,
Yes, that was part of,
because
yeah.
yeah,
If you
because
recognize you need
sometimes
professional.
get some professional help if you need it. And then also, if there's mental illness involved with that, you definitely need some professional care, or how to cope with those things. And again, I say it all the time, and I'll say it one more time. Make sure that you get yourself a community. And when I talk about community, family is community, neighbors are community, your tribe is community. It doesn't really matter about the proximity. Proximity definitely helps in this time, but the proximity is almost irrelevant. Have somebody that you can talk to, have somebody that can lend an ear, lend some help, whatever. Get yourself a community, find yourself in a community. There's somebody out there to help you, whether you realize it or not. There's more people there like you than you would think. We're all unique, but we have certain quirks and tendencies that I guarantee you 1,000 other people have those same quirks and tendencies at minimum, right?
That
And
minimum,
so
yeah.
yeah, at minimum. So just make sure that you constantly search for your tribe, search for your community, people that are that care for you, that love you, that want to see the best for you, and make sure you want to see the best for them as well. So
Yeah, it's funny you said that. I was listening to a conversation with what's his name, the inventor of Facebook,
Zuckerberg.
Zuckerberg. Yeah, I was listening to him having a conversation with somebody just talking about um, groups on Facebook and just groups in general, and the ability to develop and hone and find your community. And
Yeah, take advantage of the. I mean, you're probably online anyway, so stay online for something that's beneficial to you instead of something that's going to tear you down.
yeah,
If you're in groups that are just spewing hate and trying to get you to hate other people, then it's going to tear you down faster than it tears down the people you hate. So keep like that. That's real. So make sure that you find a group that's productive that'll help you and help cultivate you to be a better human being. Period.
there's so many groups out there. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's stuff that you just wouldn't even be like, huh? This is a thing? Like, yeah, it's a thing, you know?
Yeah, that's real. So just make sure, like I said, we're all about improving, becoming better people, finding tips on how to level up. As the saying J. Kell always says, we want to help you level up, and those things level you down in so many ways.
Eh, what do we mean by level up? Because I don't know if I think some people might get a different impression. I don't know. I don't know what that means to or how that is defined for a lot of people. When I say it, I'm thinking about uh, the different areas of somebody's life, like their
Yep.
health or their
Yep.
wealth, relationships, or just purpose. If you can
Yeah.
level up in your awareness of why you're here and what you're doing, that's to me that's successful. That's success, and that's a form of leveling up. It doesn't mean to me if you can hit all all the targets on all those areas, good. If you don't, that's fine too. But just as long as you know that you are on the journey in some
Yeah.
way, shape, form, or
Just
fashion
be
in
better.
some area.
Yeah, that's it. It's really it. When I say level up, it just be better, and better is different for everybody. Just be
Okay.
better. Be
Because
yeah.
sometimes when I say it, I think some people think of like the Instagram with the guy or the good one with the suit on, the mirror with the gold chains and the Rolex. Yeah. That's just what comes to my
Yeah,
mind
yeah,
when
yeah, I got you.
the
Yeah, leveling up
impression.
is just an improvement in your overall well being.
Okay.
And So yeah. So when we say level up, again, it just get better. Yeah. If you brushed 2 teeth yesterday, brush 3 today. You know what I'm saying? That's leveling up. You got that 3-tooth smile looking shinier than it did yesterday, right? So
might have to get some dentures or something.
yeah, whatever. Hey, if that's what you need, level up, right? Get better, improve. Make sure it's an improvement and not something that'll take you backwards. So
Gotcha. All right, okay, I can do that. That's simple enough. That's something that to me sounds attainable, achievable.
he said, brush one extra tooth. Yes. So, but
Less
anyway, yeah,
today than yesterday.
that's it.
Yeah.
So all right, that's all I got as well. We appreciate everybody that stopped by. If you're seeing this, like you said, live, if you're seeing it recorded, we thank you. We appreciate you. All this information, again, these are just conversations that we have that we want to bring to you, hopefully, hoping that it'll improve your life as well as ours. So,
yep, 2 shy guys at the mic, just having simple conversations. Hopefully, the attention and the time that you spend with us, hopefully, you get some kind of return on your investment, whether it be a smile, a chuckle, or insight, or something.
a head
Whatever
scratch.
it is. What?
Is it a head scratch?
Yeah. Thanks, Stephen. Peace and love, and hair grease, and all that good stuff. So that's all we got. Peace out.
Peace, everybody.